Thank you very much, Program Director. I want to apologize in advance that, after speaking, I have to leave this room because there's a meeting taking place at 11 o'clock all about the World Cup. Also, I want to apologize to the Program Director that in football we've got special rules. If the game is tight, we go to extra time. To see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wildflower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. That is the opening verse of William Blake's Auguries of Innocence. When you really understand these lines, you're on your way to becoming a geoscientist. Dr. Ruth Robinson tells the students of geosciences every year after their enrollment for the 4-year honors program at the University of St. Andrews in Scotland. These are people who, at the end of their studies, would understand how the dynamic Earth system works, the lithosphere, the hydrosphere, the biosphere, and atmosphere. They'll be able to interpret the Earth's history from its basic materials, rocks and minerals, and landforms, how the Earth's surfaces and tectonic processes, the biosphere and climate interact, how the nature and behavior of Earth's surface is dependent on its geology, and how humankind influences natural environments. Dr. Robinson is right about qualified geoscientists. They can indeed see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wildflower, hold infinity in the palms of their hands and eternity in an hour. This, like most things that work in life, is true to geoscientists as it is to brand and branding. These are, after all, words of a poet who lived from November 1757 to August 1827. I have chosen to start my address in this manner because things that matter, like the differences between right and wrong, are universal and timeless. Driving Africa's image and competitiveness from Africa for Africa is a reasonable and well-reasoned quest. I call it a quest, for it is a mission we need to pursue with vigor. We have to be relentless and totally inconsolable in this pursuit. We have to breathe the meaning to the cry, Mayibuye ye Africa. By this, we should universally be understood to mean Africa must return from collapse, tyranny, dependency, hunger, ignorance, and many of the ills that continue to plague our beautiful continent. I'm happy saying this to an enlightened audience you are, ladies and gentlemen, for I cannot be accused of incitement to sensationalism. When I tell you enemies of the brand Africa are armed with far more than guns, greed, and evil minds, that enemies of brand Africa include politicians that were voted into power by people in free and fair elections, that enemies of brand Africa include perceptions held by Africans of themselves, the enemies of brand Africa in churches preaching to our people to accept the notion of a heaven in another life, that they are blessed if they are poor and ignorant, because the kingdom of God will be theirs. That enemies of brand Africa will fight you at every turn. They will accuse you of harboring political ambitions, that not all enemies of brand Africa use intimidation as their weapon of choice. There are those whose weapons of trade are more subtle. They appeal to sympathy of the peoples of the world by portraying Africa's disintegration, collapse, and misery through imagery of war and starvation. They have a vested interest in keeping Africa underdeveloped and starving. The imagery of malnourished children surrounded by flies with vultures hovering around feathers their nests and usefulness. They go on to write about their African experience, depicting themselves as saviors in the same league as Jesus Christ. Theirs is the dangerous, well-marketed, non-violent form of occupation called aid. It is dangerous in that it uses images from Africa for Africa, except these images are images that will ensure Africa remains uncompetitive. I would be therefore remiss if I did not warn you that besides the reasonableness of this quest, it has very powerful enemies and predators. To them, a backward, corruption and debt-riddled Africa, unable to support its people in a beneficial business model that it would seek to defend and preserve at whatever cost. In case you are shocked and about to switch off or question my motive and belief, do not. I've spent a decade rebutting stories ranging from whether hosting a soccer World Cup is a priority for Africa, given the hunger, starvation, and bankruptcy of its governments, to what we are going to do with elephants and lions on the streets, to the crime, violence, and savagery that Africans are prone to. In most of the above, there was backing imagery from Africa used to illustrate these absurd views. In one of the occasions, the monkey and baboons of Mount Ashcombe estate in KwaZulu-Natal and Cape Point used to illustrate our supposed invasion. The bid to hold the FIFA World Cup was for us a decade-long campaign to present an Africa devoid of the stereotypical conflict, decay, and starvation. When we were hosting the World Cup, I had the occasion of hosting a lunch and an exhibition for the Nobel Committee in honor and dedication to our 3 Nobel laureates, former Presidents Mandela and de Klerk and Archbishop Tutu's contribution to our bid to hold the 2010 FIFA World Cup for the first time in Africa, a century after the first World Cup was held. I observed that on that day, which was the eve of the final match, Africa's World Cup was destined to be the most successful FIFA World Cup ever. That Africa's World Cup was made even more special if you consider the odds against which it had to be organized. When the World Cup is hosted in Western Europe, it happens there without drama. It attracts people who follow and love football. Hosting the World Cup in Western Europe is in all respect a safe choice. Venturing into Africa was described, among other ghastly things, as reckless by FIFA, with President Joseph Sepp Blatter singled out for ridicule for his unwavering vocal support of an African hosting. Were to rebut constant rumors of a supposed Plan B that would have seen this historic organizing of the 2010 FIFA World Cup go to Australia. The stability of our democratic structures was questioned. We were advised to suspend elections and freedoms enshrined in our constitution in favor of stability. I'm happy that we prepared and successfully hosted this World Cup without compromising any democratic ideal for which our Nobel laureates fought so hard for our nations to attain. This World Cup will be remembered for how its reach and appeal went far beyond a beautiful game. It helped South Africa graduate from a country that had promise and prospects for success to a country and a people that get things done, in ways similar, in other areas much better than they have been done in Western Europe, where it is considered safe hosting the World Cup. There was no need for qualifying statement like, for an African country that was not bad. This is one of the best World Cups, period. It has lived true to the spirit that is recognized and given impetus by the Nobel Award. The 2010 FIFA World Cup, South Africa, has, like Nobel laureates, defied the odds and defeated the doom and gloom that is born more out of a perpetuation of stereotypes rather than reality on the ground. It has confirmed to the world that Africa is unfairly excluded in the mix of venues for hosting premier international events that bring prestige to the nation that hosts them. It has proven to Africans that the self-censure, skepticism, and doubt that they perpetuate against themselves are necessary and without foundation in reality. It has indeed gone a long way in leveling the playing field. We are meeting here today in discussions and initiatives that follow could be that push that brought it all together into a movement that brought back Africa. I would like to share with you some of the universal truths that were, for me, crystallized by the World Cup experience. One, if you are to succeed when odds are stacked against you, you have to develop a thick skin and totally disregard the naysayers Do not listen to the naysayers. By the time they finish, will be filled with doubt and hopelessness. They are driven by forces and interests that are motivated by what you want to defeat in the first place. The odds are so stacked against Brand Africa that it has to transcend paralysis by over-analysis. It has to be agile, alert, and swift. It has to be fresh and undeterred. Ladies and gentlemen, we're in a quiet and an esteemed company with regards to marketing brains. I am therefore confident that the brand personality of Brand Africa is in safe hands. It will include all the attributes I mentioned. 2, Brand Africa will be stillborn if you don't make choices. For example, Africa has to make a tough choice between being a trading partner or a dependent subordinate in its relationship with the world. The world will treat us as in accordance and commensurate with the choice we make. We did not go to FIFA and the world and ask for them to do us a favor, drop standards and pitch us into hosting a big, great African World Cup. From the beginning, we sought to prove not only to the world but ourselves that we are willing and capable and have the capacity to undertake the mammoth task of hosting the biggest and most prestigious event in the world. 3, please ask people to serve, especially those that are influential. Ask them to participate in their sphere of influence. Our bid to host the World Cup benefited greatly from influential leaders in the different spheres of society, from business leaders through serving and retired heads of states to religious leaders. All we had to do was to ask. You'll be surprised at the will and the input you'll receive. There are champions leading powerful institutions waiting for our calls to let them make a difference by being involved with Africa along commercial, corruption-free, profitable, and mutually beneficial basis. We had that champion in Joseph Seth Blatter. He is revered the whole world over for taking a chance on Africa. He points to the commitment and hard work of Africans. He, however, could not help observing how we are obsessed in talking ourselves down and out. Brand Africa, like any cause, requires evangelism and activism. I have said that driving Africa's image and competitiveness for Africa is a reasonable and well-reasoned quest. Evangelists tend to have a slightly higher volume lest their voices drown in a sea of non-believers' voices. Julius Malema will be the first to acknowledge that he does not have any more rights than any person in this room. He, however, noticed that most of us in this room like to make our point of view privately, usually expressing a dissatisfaction of a kind. He therefore sought to make his point of view publicly, at the top of his voice, may I add. Soon he started setting the agenda. A party and country now has a before and after Julius as a definition of an era. Activists register every step forward as a victory to build on. They avoid having a usual day. The future they seek is built every day, one day at a time, visibly, with the achievements well published and shared for the believers to see the progress. There is a clever actuary in South African business leadership that has interrogated the circumstances and numbers of our World Cup versus those in modern history. Germany, Korea, Japan, France, and the USA. He has gone on to look at Brazil and possible UK hosting. His name is Irvin Khoza, the CEO of Discovery. He articulates with backing numbers the challenge we faced. For example, we built all our stadiums battery from scratch. The United States of America, France, and Germany, but only two that they built afresh, did not have to build any venues. Co-hosting meant the burden between Korea and Japan was shared. He did not stop at stadium. He looked into the whole infrastructure, including airports and roads, the quality, the time to build, the effects of industrial action during the construction phase. He makes an unqualified case of a people with both the will and ability to make things happen irrespective of the measure. One of the factors that stand out from Irvin Khoza's presentation is this. Besides all these capabilities and matching successes, it is amazing how our esteem and attitude towards our successes and ourselves is generally negative. This points to a perceptual challenge that requires addressing. 4, the Brand Africa initiative can therefore not be useful if it is not public. We have to present it in a tangible, digestible manner, the so-called problems of Africa with Africa, the possible accessible solutions, so that the people can begin to believe they are solvable. The power of perception cannot be overemphasized. Perceptions tend to outweigh the reality on the ground. Brand Africa needs to defeat powerful, well-funded stereotypes that have graduated into general truths, leading to people to discount themselves and their capabilities. People failing to see the beauty of what they have unless an African say it. We are armed with images and success of the 2010 FIFA World Cup. It will be a sin if we do not use this to mitigate the risk that was perceived to come with hosting prestigious events in Africa. 5, there are a lot of channels that are ready to spread the love. We had a lot of support from the religious leaders in our bid to host the World Cup. Like soccer, religion provides a medium, channel, vehicle to the people of Africa whilst they are in an appropriate mindset. There is a pastor who impressed me lately, Pastor Newell Jones. He's on a mission to get people to stop deferring their lives today in favor of a heaven where everything is supposedly going to be perfect. He's reawakening people, urging them to fully contribute and utilize their lives and talent to make a difference today. Brand Africa has to find a place and define roles for Africans at all levels today. We have to graduate miracles to the norm. We cannot, after finding a solution to apartheid through a negotiated settlement, brokered amongst ourselves, allow naysayers to dub our achievement a miracle, thus implying it was not expected of us and hence abnormal. We achieved a solution because we had courageous men and women who put South Africa first. They abandoned narrow interest in favor of progress. So let's refuse, flat out, when they attempt to find a special term to define the success of the Africa's 2010 FIFA World Cup. It was 100 billion month-long editorial campaign money cannot buy. But we have a 4-year window to leverage without interruption. One of the observations I made towards the end of the month-long tournament was how people, even those that did not follow soccer before, were certainly expert on the offside rule. I therefore have no doubt that we'll all comprehend when new template behaviors that needed to be ruled offside if Brand Africa has to thrive. It is important that in your definition of Brand Africa you also define what it is not. That will help you rule offside undesirable behaviors. Africa's time has come. I thank you.